he's not done, kind of like a full-blown stream or a Twitter space since that one where he was on stage with Elon for a minute or two. And that was probably 2 years ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago it was. I want to say about 2 years, right? And he's basically been underground this whole time. He continues to surprise us, and the latest Richard Hart surprise is that he's running. It's not so much that he's running another sacrifice, but that in my opinion, he's running another sacrifice in a very different way than he has previously. So if you think about the underlying differences between what would normally happen. Normally, we're used to seeing Richard Hart sacrifices that, he gets out in front. He tells you probably a month or two in advance, gets you excited about it, tells you the use case, tells you, why, his thing is going to be better than everybody else's. He goes around to the usual suspects on crypto Twitter or YouTube, crypto YouTube, does interviews, gets, big telegrams full of memes. This is also true for, Hex when he was launching Hex, right? This time around, though, it's completely different. It's probably, if you just look at it superficially, the most low effort SAC you could ever imagine. I'll point out a few things that are really low effort. I think the logo was crowdsourced and done pretty much hastily in a hurry. The name was basically kind of stillborn, I guess. It started as MrProve, which everybody thought sounded a little bit clunky. And then he just decided, okay, I'll just stick with my whole put an X on the end of things thing that he did with Pulsex, right? So we ended up with Provex. We were snap launched basically with very little warning. I don't know how much warning we got them, but I'm going to say it was a few days before the actual sacrifice phase started, right? We were snap launched this sacrifice with almost no warning, no website, no documentation, really, no demo, no real explanation about what is so earth-shatteringly new and great about this thing, right? Basically no product information. And while he's hinted at streaming, he hasn't done any streaming. But what he does like to do is put things in Twitter that say, are you working on a Saturday night? Are you working on a Sunday night? So he's working hard, I guess. But we haven't really seen anything yet. And there's effectively no marketing going on for this. I think, ironically, Dylan and I are the only guys actually trying to promote Provex at this point. And I tweeted this afternoon, basically like, hey, if you're shilling Provex, I want to follow you. And basically, I didn't get a single person respond. Yeah, I'm totally down, and I'm going to be promoting Provex. I didn't get a single response. Other than just like a that a boy from Maddie, basically. So I find myself pretty much alone in being bullish about the potential, at least here. So there's effectively no marketing, no effort to raise any kind of awareness, whatsoever about this. And so the narrative that immediately emerged is that he's doing another cash grab, and the kind of usual suspects all came around and said, oh, Richard Hart, he's evil, he's back, and he's, coming to do a cash grab to rip off his community one more time. That's sort of the immediate narrative that people jumped on. And then I think many people in the community who are in the down and butthurt category are basically now screaming about. We don't have any real proof of life either for Richard. And this is causing some angst as well. I mean, it's a fair question. Like, you're taking people's money, but like, we don't actually know if you're in an okay place or if you're being forced to do this, coerced to do this. If you're of sound mind, we have to basically read the tea leaves through your random Twitter posts, right? There's let's see what else. We have the kind of mysterious tornadoing of the ETH from the Pulsechain Pulsex sack, which wasn't explained, but basically occurred shortly before all of this ramped up. Richard's announcement, the one thing he did announce, the one piece of information we did get was that he wasn't accepting RH coins, right? And that caused a kind of sizable sell-off in RH coins. I think they dropped about 20% on the day. I don't know how have they been doing since, Dylan?
As you'd expect, pretty poorly. I think we filled the wick on for Hex and for Pulse, and not sure about Pulsex or anything. So pretty poorly, I'd say.
So this caused quite a bit more angst, but is interesting nonetheless, because people seem to be persisting with I think a contradicting narrative, which is that this is a cash grab, but in reality, all the lack of comfort that he's given you has meant that there's been barely anybody sacrificing to this. So I don't know. I haven't checked lately, but unless there's been massive sacrifices, yeah, he's at about $2 million now, and 321K of that has come from our pool, actually. So what does that make us? Pretty decent size.
Yeah, number one.
Yeah, number one. So yeah, we're over 10% of the pool. In any case, let's see. So there's two contradicting narratives. One is that this is a cash grab and he's just trying to take all of your money again, you idiots. And then there's another one, and then there's another narrative, which is that he's basically given up, right? And he's not doing anything. So they don't really make sense, because you see, if you want to raise as much money as possible to have a cash grab, you'd be basically doing what Dylan and I are doing and going around and talking to people constantly, doing whatever you can to get people interested, right? In this instance, he's done the exact opposite. And I have to think that there's a deliberate reason for that. I happen to think that Richard is after not your money, for he could easily have sold a small portion of his Pulse or PHEX or Pulsex if he wanted to raise capital. He could have done that without you even realizing it, I would imagine. Or he could basically go out and do interviews and try and get really a lot of organic excitement around what he's doing with a product demo or something like that, explaining the brilliance of what Provex is. But he's opted so far not to do that. So I'm of the opinion that essentially he's looking actually not to raise a lot of money for this. And we're now basically a quarter of the way through the sacrifice period, and we still don't have a website. We still don't have documentation. We still don't have any streams, proof of life. And in essence, most people are saying this thing's not sexy. It's not glamorous. I'm not interested. I've had a lot of people I think there's essentially two reactions when you speak to people. The first reaction is, this guy's a dumpster fire. I'm not going anywhere near this. I'm not touching this. Right. That's kind of the first reaction. And then there's my reaction, which is, this actually makes a lot of sense. And I think there's actually potentially a kind of potentially, we don't know yet, but maybe one of the best investment opportunities you're ever going to see in crypto here. You have what used to be the world's greatest altcoin founder effectively offering you to get in at ground level, just about. I mean, there's currently $2 million in the pool, implying $2 million market cap of demand. you could probably imagine that number will go up reasonably before the end of the sacrifice period. Dylan thinks that number could be about 5 million. I think it'll be probably closer to 20, but those are pretty small numbers for a guy who has other coins with hundreds of millions of market cap still, who has a track record of creating something like Hex, which used to obviously have billions of dollars of market cap, and was maybe one of the greatest success stories, at least temporarily, in the history of crypto appreciation. And in fact, I think to Dylan and I, this whole thing reminds us a lot of where Hex was early on. Initially, even though Richard warned us, when Richard did the original sacrifice, which he called an adoption amplifier for Hex, it lasted for a period of 365 days. On day one, the community aped in a few $1 million, something unsustainable for the demand at the time, because you'd basically need to be running a similar amount or a proportionate amount based on the supply that was being minted for 365 days in order for that number to be kind of common sense. It was too high. We weren't worth 3 million times 365 or whatever the proportional amount would be. And we dropped 97% the first 30 days of Hex. During that time, Richard was available. He was around, but the community was more angry than they are now. People were really angry. We had a Telegram room called Hexbad, where we were all basically sent to say bad things, and then which we enjoyed. And eventually, Richard basically just banned everyone in that room, even from the Hexbad room. It was a period of tremendous angst from the community. He hadn't been vindicated as of yet at that point in time with Hex's success. So it looked like he just basically robbed everybody of $3 million at that point. And yeah, Richard wasn't particularly sympathetic during that period. I remember asking him kind of what I thought were pretty reasonable questions about certain things. And he basically just sent me a message saying, "What you wrote sucks a bag of dicks." It was kind of a weird thing to be seeing from a founder. Usually when I get a thorny question, and you'll hear that tonight from somebody, I'm sure, I try to empathize with them and understand, what their concern is. I try to think about, how we can mitigate those concerns. Richard's not readily available, but we find ourselves in a situation where things are incredibly cheap, and people have checked out. I talked to a bunch of people in this community today about this. They were basically looking at altcoins, and they hadn't even considered this Provex thing. Right. And here they were basically having a conference call about shitcoins. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually here to tell you why I think Provex is potentially a good option. And they're like, oh, I don't want to go near Richard. Richard's basically in a position where he has all the money in the world. He doesn't need more money. He definitely doesn't need $2 million from assholes like us. He's running a sacrifice nonetheless. He's doing everything he can not to raise too much money. It's the polar opposite of Richard during the Pulsechain Pulsex sacrifice phase, where he was doing everything he could to raise billions and $1 billion for each. In essence, he's going to raise basically maybe 2 factors of 10 less for this than he did for those. And one of the comments that somebody made was, that's going to look really pathetic, right? And I said, yes, it's going to look really pathetic. And that's going to look really pathetic until that $10 million raised becomes $100 million raised, and then it's going to turn into marketing. I'm of the opinion that Richard wants a win. How does he engineer a win with a low market cap coin? He says that market cap is a vanity metric, kind of famously. It doesn't matter, it's a vanity metric. I'm going to say market cap is a value metric, right? It's a pretty useful thing, actually. And this might be the moment when the community finally understands that I've been right about this for a long time. When you go into something with a very high valuation, it just makes it a lot harder to get ROI out of it. ROI stands for return on investment. So in essence, we find ourselves in a position where Richard's asking us to take, a few of us, to take a leap of faith. You see, another thing is he doesn't need to necessarily make 10,000 people billionaires, right? Or whatever people used to say. At the moment, it's good enough for him to, maybe make a few hundred people who sacrifice a 10x or a 20x or maybe more, right? That's something that he can market. That's something that he can use to start to improve his track record, redeem his reputation. It's something that he can use to go out and brag. He can go on YouTube channels, again, like Ivan on Tech, and say, here's my new product. Oh, by the way, the people that invested in it are now very happy because they're up 100x. And he can basically just turn the page from the effective failures from an investment standpoint that we've currently have with Pulsechain and Pulsex, and I think you could argue Hex as well, which is down precipitously from its top. We were at 50 cents at one point. I don't know where we are today, Dylan, but it's way below 1 cent, right? So that's effectively indistinguishable from the rug pull at this point in time.
It's even below half a penny now. So
yeah, there you go. So it might as well be rugged. A lot of people in the community will say, well, he should do something for the Pulsechain guys or the Pulsex guys. And, I understand where that sentiment comes from. Yes, you would like something to be done for you because you hold a lot of those coins and you would like to make money and feel less bad. But in reality, with where we are in the cycle, it's not a period where an EVM L1 alternative to Ethereum is going to do pretty well. In fact, crypto in general is doing incredibly poorly at the moment. So there's basically nothing he can do to get a lot of excitement into those kind of core coins, if you will, with where we're at presently. It's next to impossible. And yes, a lot of you guys will say, hey, you should just pump the thing because they effectively want to sell. So they're asking for a pump, an exit pump. And Richard's not stupid. He's not going to do that either, because why would he? He's already tried it a few times. The green candles didn't actually result in people saying, oh, what's going on over at Pulsechain? I want to go over there. We weren't in the right conditions for this entire bull market to really get a proper pump in Pulsechain or Pulsex. And we weren't really alone either. AVAX hasn't done very well. Any of the other things like it. So what he can do though is create a new product, raise as little bit of money as possible, and launch it, and let it float, let it find its relative value versus Pulse and Pulsex. And I think that's what he's doing. And the recipe there is pretty good. So when Richard first announced this, I was instantly excited because I basically looked at all this and said to myself, I can't come up with any other plausible theory, and I still can't, for why Richard would be doing things this way, other than he's gone insane, or he's trying to sandbag this thing to engineer what should hopefully be a pretty decent return, so that he can claim a quick W and be ready to come out bragging about his new baby. And longer term, that means we get our founder back, which is really good for the ecosystem. I think most of us would really like to see Richard back doing what he does best, which is basically being that guy on YouTube that is pretty smart and has a lot of interesting takes on things, is a little bit fun and controversial, kind of a polymath type of thinker. We would all like to see that come back. But in reality, it's just really hard to be that guy when your product is basically in the tank and you're on the run from Interpol. So that's where we are presently today. So the opportunity. So how does this work? So basically, assuming Richard raises, let's say, 10 million, Dylan and I have a bet, I think, of $200 on an over-under line of 11 million. But we'll just pretend that's 10 million for the moment. And Pulse and Pulsex are trading in the hundreds of millions. Ink's trading around 80 million. This product should find some relative value to those on launch. I would assume in the tens of millions. I would assume maybe 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million. And with a little bit of hype and a little bit of marketing, a little bit of excitement, that could pretty easily be north of 100 million, right? It's a pretty big range. So, don't say that I said, it'll be 100 million, but I mean, it would be pretty easy for it to go above that for a period of time at least. And if there actually is a groundbreaking, earth-shattering new product here that is actually really useful, and that remains to be seen. We don't really have any information, so I discount this theory. But if that actually happens, such things are, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, on the chain today. And you presently find yourself basically looking at potentially a 7-digit million valuation at the end of the sacrifice. Probably a high one, I would argue, but Dylan thinks a mid one. That in itself is a pretty compelling investment thesis. Furthermore, you have a founder who used to be one of the best in the game, if not the best in promotion, who has done nothing to promote this and has the potential any moment that he wishes to basically come back and start, being the Elon Musk of altcoin crypto again, basically. I think that's the metaphor that I like to use is try to imagine if Kamala Harris had won the election. What would have happened to Elon? Elon would have basically have been sued 1 million times. They probably would have come after him with the DOJ. They probably would have tried to throw him in prison for helping Trump. They probably would have nationalized SpaceX, like a la Venezuela or, one of these communist dictatorships. They probably would have banned Twitter for all I know. Or forced him to basically bend the knee, like Jack Ma was forced to in Alibaba. But in any case, Elon probably would have gone to jail or been fighting a protracted legal battle for a few years, and he would have been disgraced. They probably would have pinned the whole Epstein thing on him. They probably would have just like run his reputation through the mud. So basically it'd be a lot like what happened to Richard the last 4 or 5 years. He would go from being the greatest person in crypto to the worst guy in crypto. He would go from being invited everywhere to being nowhere. And now imagine if at the end of this new Kamala Harris administration, a Republican suddenly wins and all that vanishes. And imagine Elon then makes the move of, okay, guys, I'm gonna start a new company, and I'm still very rich. I'm still really well funded, but I'm gonna start a new company, and it's gonna have a $2 million valuation. Would you invest in that company with Elon, the world's greatest entrepreneur who has a track record of creating companies like Tesla or SpaceX? Who's used to be the world's richest person, used to be the best? Of course you would. You would absolutely invest. And so would anybody who's smart, right? But there'd be a lot of people, even in that situation, would say, no. Elon's washed up. Elon's finished. He's never coming back. But, the rational people in the room would say, yeah, of course, I'll give Elon a blank check for anything at that valuation. And it's not to say that Rich is the greatest entrepreneur in the world. I wouldn't say that at all. But he is, at least from a crypto perspective, the greatest altcoin founder, arguably, or at least was the greatest altcoin founder in the history of crypto, right? Like Hex, for its moment in time, for the type of thing that it was, is probably one of the greatest storylines in all of crypto, and he's capable of that. So I think, we find ourselves in a really interesting situation. As I said earlier, 25% of the time into the sacrifice, no proof of life, no real information, an incredibly low valuation. What are the things that we do know this time? Well, the sacrifice is pretty similar, right? In terms of rules, it's lasting about 20 days. Richard's expecting to stream a little bit. Everything is broadly similar to rules and other sacrifices. There's one small change in that the volume multiplier has been actually increased this time from 2.5 to 3. And that's pretty much all we know. Is there any other kind of pertinent details about the sacrifice, Dylan, that are new or different that I'm missing?
No, it's maybe it's shorter than Pulsex. I don't remember if it's shorter than the Pulsex, but other than that, it's pretty much the same playbook, same analogy and everything.
Okay.
As far as how he describes the volume bonus and stuff.
And the kind of only other detail that's dramatically different is that he's opted not to accept RH coins, right? Controversial in the community, not helping out, the bag holders of Pulse and Pulsechain. It effectively, by doing this, forces those people to either sell at a massive discount, which, I assume is already north of 20%, if not more by now, from where it was before the announcement. Or forces them to bring new capital, right? Which means the valuation of this thing is going to be substantially lower, because while there were plenty of people who had incredibly large positions in RH core coins who might take the opportunity to try to unload those positions, especially if they're illiquid, they are now stuck in those coins still, down 20%, 30%, and asked to bring their stable coins at a point in the cycle where everybody wishes they had more stable coins. And they have plenty of other options to sell things if they wish. Or sorry, they have plenty of other options to invest in if they wish. You can buy, Solana basically at half the price at the moment, for example, right? So it's actually, a pretty hard sell to come out with a new product right now. And this is a product that, as far as I know, doesn't even really have a big use case. People don't really even use these things. Similar things exist to what we think he's building. Things like ZK2P, you guys have never heard of them, you don't use them. They're not that useful to whales. This just helps people Venmo a few grand into crypto. It's not actually useful for people with real money. Might be useful for like a zoomer like Dylan here, but who wants to take a portion of his paycheck and buy crypto with it. But it's not useful if you're some massive whale and you need to do an OTC deal of a couple $100 million or whatever. It doesn't really do that for you. So we find ourselves in this kind of very interesting position where the likely outcome of this is that we're going to raise maybe $10 to $20 million. Depends on how much effort Richard puts in towards the end, in my opinion, how much comfort he gives you. And I'm starting to think we're not going to get much comfort, Dylan. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it, man.
Yeah, because we were supposed to have documentation a few days ago, right? And we still have nothing. And Richard's actually running out of time to promote this more broadly. So I would say that horse is probably already bolted. So probably the only thing he can do is just give you guys a little bit more comfort that he's okay and in a good place, which is interesting. So maybe he'll do that at some point, but as of yet, we don't even know if it's him or if he's been hacked or if he's been kidnapped and wrenched attacked or something. It's absolutely uncertain in this regard. So basically, I looked at the sac rolls, saw that the multiplier was bigger, and came to the conclusion that I'm potentially getting into a single-digit market cap Richard Hart coin that he hasn't even begun to market yet at the absolute lowest valuation. And I was instantly interested. And looking at the 3x sac multiplier rule, I realized that basically anybody who gets a multiple like that, in essence, it lowers the valuation for you at the expense of people underneath you. I'm not sure how I feel about that. ethically, but those are the rules of the game. And the people that play the game agree to play them that way. So I immediately went to work creating the first and presently only SAC pool for Provex. And I probably spent about as much time as Richard did on the name. I just added the word pool to it, provexpool.com. Dylan created a logo for the pool, I think with AI, where he just put a backdrop of water underneath.
That's handmade, baby.
Yeah. But more importantly, we went to work corralling the OGs in our secret cabal chat, much vaunted secret cabal chat, and other parts of Telegram where we know people. And I've been having these conversations with you guys almost nightly, either in the Telegram or here on Twitter. And we launched provexpool.com unofficially yesterday, but officially now. And as you guys may have noticed, we've obviously taken the lead initially with just a 5-figure sacrifice of 50K, but we've since then increased our pools sacrifice to where are we at today? 320 now, Dylan?
Yeah, 320 and change.
So about 100K of that's come directly from my team. The other bits have come primarily from 2 whales. I don't know if they have more appetite, but I certainly might, depending on how things go over the next 16 days. There are plenty of other people that are very keen. We have a Telegram room with about 400 people in it. We have had really well attended Twitter spaces. And as far as I know, we're the only people that have put together a bull case for Provex and are actually talking about it. Which is a complete departure from last time when all of you were probably saying 10,000x for Pulsex, dude, there's a buy and burn, all that stuff, right? Those people are now basically like Brandon calling Richard a scammer, right? And saying this is a cash grab. But I think those people on this occasion are going to look really stupid if Richard then proceeds to simply raise a low valuation and then follow through with his promises and launch a coin into his ecosystem that I think will probably 10x. And additionally, I think the multiplier may give you something like a 3x on top of that, but probably a little bit less for most of you, that sacrifice. So you're looking at it, something with like a pretty easy argument that it could be a 30x potential. It could be more than that though. It could be more if the product is actually very useful, or if the price is manipulated much higher by large whales. We don't have any guarantees of that. But if somebody were to want to have a quick success, that would be pretty easy to engineer with somebody that has the better part of $1 billion worth of crypto. So we have no guarantees that that's what's going to happen, but we know that would be easier to do than to do it to say Pulse or Pulsex or even Hex at this stage. So what I think is in front of you is probably maybe the best investment opportunity you're going to see this year, maybe this decade. And nobody except for people that have come into contact with me seems to have realized this yet. Well, not nobody. I'll say, swimming around, watching this sacrifice, there are a number of OGs like me who've independently come to this conclusion. And I'll even add that I had a private conversation with Eric Wall this afternoon. And I said, basically, Eric, I'm having a space. If you want to join and make fun of us, it would be great. I've actually got a bull investment thesis for Provex. And he responded, oh, no, I think I already get it. So even Eric Wall basically sees what the play here is.
Yeah, Buck, I wanted to pick your brain about your bull thesis here. Before I do that, I just want to clarify one thing. I call Richard a conman, not a scammer. In my opinion, there is a distinction. Scammer requires a higher bar of evidence. Conman is just someone who preaches and says they're one thing, then does another. Richard went around for years saying he was this public fighter who doesn't stand down for a fight, painting himself as this public thought leader when he was getting ready to take all the money, and after he got it, he's been hiding under a rock for years. So, Conman is just someone who does one thing and says he's going to do one thing and does another. I think it's fair to say that he falls under that definition. So I call him that, not a scammer.
Okay,
so
hold on. Let's pause there because that's interesting. So Conman, I think we can be a little bit charitable and push back on that and say I think Richard's had pretty good, understandable reason to kind of go underground. It may not be what we would wish him to do. It may not be the best thing for us, you could argue, but he did get sued by the SEC. He did have this Interpol issue and remains to have this Interpol issue with Finnish taxes. We didn't really know about that until later, I suppose. He punched a teenager. I don't even really understand the details of that, but he's had his reasons. So I don't know if Conman is necessarily the right thing. I think, in my opinion, what he's guilty of, what he's definitely guilty of, Brandon, is maybe being too optimistic with you guys. Hex did a 10,000x, so Pulsex by definition, therefore, can do a 10,000x. I mean, that was always a little bit half-baked because in reality, Hex didn't really do a 10,000x. It dropped 99%. And then for a very small number of people, like literally a handful of people.
Actually, Buck, the chart was pointed to $1 million, by the way. So keep that in mind.
There you go. There's another example of what I mean. The chart was pointed at $1 million. So, when he told you guys, I think it's a good thing that Pulsex is raising $1 billion. It means people are really interested in it, right? Market cap's just a vanity metric. I think, he's maybe a little bit guilty of kind of raising your hopes and your expectations a little bit too high with what's possible, and probably not talking to you guys enough about risk as well, right? So you'll notice whenever I talk about anything, I'll always make sure I spend time talking about what can go wrong. And Richards just calls that imaginary horribles. Well, in reality, horribles are not imaginary. They happen sometimes. So I think if I had a bone to pick with him about that, about anything, it would really just be that, is that, he hasn't properly set your expectations, and properly warned you about the risks of what he's doing in those two sacrifices. Now, you were going to continue, so please continue.
Sure. Yeah. No. I could quibble on that point further, but I get what you're saying. Yeah. Look, man. If I'm understanding where you're coming from correctly, it seems like you're just saying, look, guys, this time is different because it's cheap. This time is actually a good valuation. I get that. I can buy that, but are we still not in the same situation that we were with the previous sacks and the previous coins, which is, everyone here, all of you guys, we all know that none of this bullshit works without Richard at the helm. So with him gone, how do things change? Where does the organic buy pressure come from? Where does the growth come from? Like, sure, you're getting a better valuation, but okay, when this thing launches, then what? It's just us. It's just us. Where does the growth? Yeah, go ahead.
So I think Richard pretty much publicly admitted, as much as you can get from him, that he injected roughly $20 to $25 million of his own money into his coins, but it just didn't work to create a real pump because they're so high valuation. But let's say he does even like a few million or whatever. If this thing is at 10 million valuation, then even like relatively small Richard Hart buys that he can do without any promotion, without any comeback, just what he's been doing over the last 2 years, would have much, much better success. Like if you have like $10 million sacrifice, let's say, and then he injects, let's say, 5 million, 10 million, which you could easily do from the SEC money alone. That's more than enough to give you a nice pump. And you would also have all of the like hexagons that basically in sheer coin flip desperation would FOMO in after their life ruining losses with the Richard Hart core coins. So I think that is enough to give you a little bit of a high pump. Even if nothing else in his behavior changes. Like the only thing he needs to do is just inject like a few $1 million at that valuation. because it's just completely different. If you have something like Hex or Pulsechain that's like $600-700 million valuation, it's way different than if you have like a low liquidity shit coin and you can literally just pump that with a few $1,000,000.
No, I get it, man. You know, I've always maintained that I could totally see the potential for Pulsechain or even this thing to pump and dump. But where does the long-term growth come from? The long-term growth comes from Richard being the person he said he was all those years ago. That's the only way any of this ever gains any sort of long-term traction. And the last few years have shown that he's, you know, in my opinion, fundamentally unreliable and untrustworthy. Maybe he comes back and actually tries. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he says, you know, it's Mr. Perv today and Mrs. Perv tomorrow, and the market has chosen Mrs. Perv, whatever, right? But even if this thing does come out, you guys are able to make a little bit of money. If you guys make some gains, there will be profit taking, right? So why even stack? Why not just wait for the dip, and then where's the long term future past that? I mean, if you guys are just treating this thing as like a short term trade, pumping up, I mean, maybe, but
Yeah.
I mean, long-term future. Are we even taking that seriously?
Well, let me answer this one, Marissa.
I'm not.
So I think the first thing you want to consider is this thing does have a intrinsic value versus Pulsex and Pulse, right? And it'll have to find that over time, right? It will go way above that, it'll go below that, but it will find that, and it'll find that place where it belongs, right? And over time, I imagine that the liquidity will be pretty thick between it and Pulse, because I'm going to guess that whoever owns a lot of Pulse also is going to own a lot of this coin, right? So I think you'll be able to go in between Pulse and this coin relatively easily for most people, would be my guess. So I'm not too worried about that. If Pulsex is worth $100 million or whatever it's worth today, then you know it's not too unreasonable for this thing to be worth 50 or 60 or 70 or something like that. And depending on how you value Pulse, it might be worth a few $100 million. You know, this thing can be worth quite a bit more than it is presently at a $2 million valuation. In terms of your question directly, you know, like where does this go? I think that's a great question. The key thing here is I think that this is part of enabling him to do exactly what you would like him to do. I don't know what you do for a living, but I've been working on hedge funds for 20 years. You know, I can tell you it's incredibly easy to make money raising funds. The biggest part of what we do in funds management, like more so than the actual investment stuff, is we spend a lot of time talking to clients and raising more money, right? It's actually like the biggest part of our job, right? Everybody likes to think that like they're talking to an investment guru, but in reality, like the biggest thing we do is just go and talk to our clients, right? They want to see us, they want to hear from us. It's impossible to raise money. Very hard, very, very, very hard when you've had a bad year, right? Richard's had 3 bad years. I can tell you then it's like exceptionally difficult. Like basically almost nobody will touch you. You know, like it's been 3 bad years for us, but it hasn't been really great for Ethereum either. And it hasn't really been great for any other EVM either, right? So we're not really special in that we're down. We just are probably down more than most other things. You know, part of that is that, you know, we were massively overvalued when Richard, you know, raised money for Pulsex and Pulse. Another part of that is just that he's had these legal issues that have basically hamstrung himself for the past few years. Now, the SEC issue is resolved, hence the new sacrifice. His tax issue, we don't know really much about that, other than circumstantially, I know that he's got people working on it, right? But I presume that ultimately that gets resolved as well, I hope. And we also additionally know that he said, I'm not streaming yet, but I probably will in a few days. That was the tweet that he made a few days ago. He's still, by the way, not streaming and still hasn't put up more documents. But He did at least say in a tweet the other day that he planned on doing that. So, I mean, we could be, 24 hours or a week away from, basically seeing Richard again for the first time doing his thing. And it would make sense if he, wants this thing to gain traction, that he kind of has to do that, Brandon. Like, he kind of has to at least partially come back and start promoting things and getting people excited about it. The real question is when does that begin in earnest? Does that begin now during the sacrifice phase? I think if he wanted to cash grab and raise a lot of money, he'd already be out tap dancing, and he'd be, telling you about how cool this thing is and how it's going to change the world. But so far, we're 25% of the way through, and there's effectively silence and very little money raised as a result. So I think he's deliberately sandbagging it and coming out slowly. And I think that he is likely to basically become more effervescent through time as he looks to engineer this easy W with Provex, right? So, I would anticipate that, let's say this thing launches in January. He's going to be pretty active by Christmas, and that's well after the sacrifice period ends. So I think if we do have a shot at him coming back and having success, this is a small stepping stone in beginning that journey. It'll give them something to talk about. It'll give them a positive story to tell people. When this thing goes up, people are going to make quite a bit of money. We're going to be bragging about it. We're going to be saying, look at all our massive gains. Feels pretty good. Other people, as Moritz rightly said, will actually coin flip and come in. So they may start inadvertently pumping this thing that way as well. We've seen this before. Could this thing have a hex-like dynamic where, it encourages people to lock up their tokens? I don't know. Like, these are all interesting things that, we've yet to really to really hear anything about, because he's provided absolutely no information. So yeah, I could be wrong about all this. Like, the guy could have just gone full Jim Jones Kool-Aid crazy. That's a possibility. He doesn't sound crazy. His tweets still sound like pretty rational. He may be eccentric, he may be egotistical, but he doesn't appear to be crazy as far as I can see. Is this a cash grab? No. If it's a cash grab, he'd do it a million other ways and very differently than how he's doing it now. It's exactly what Eric Wall and I basically, and Moritz independently came to the conclusion that he's looking for an easy victory to reset the narrative around him, and we're going to get our founder back next year. That's really the simplest explanation I can think of for this. I know it sounds convoluted, but it's actually pretty simple.
There's a case to be made from the perspective of a long-term investor, someone who's been around. I mean, Richard's demonstrated that he's the kind of person that can go around for years saying one thing and at the drop of a dime do a complete 180 and go in the opposite direction. This is just not the type of figure you can really trust or believe in long term. So I mean, with that being the case, I don't see how anyone new would want to participate in this thing. If you want to do some short-term trade, sure, fine. But I just don't see how anything has changed past a short-term pump and dump. Maybe if he gets out there, sure. But again, with who he's shown to be for years, and again, man, just all the endless excuses. There's always an excuse for why he can't try or why things can't be good. There's never the effort to actually attempt to even appear to try and make this thing a success. So, he pretty much abandoned his first thing. Why wouldn't he abandon the next thing, right? So I think that's kind of the problem with anything and everything he'll be doing moving forward. Whether we loved in this space, we love to make believe like the market doesn't see all of this, but the market does see all of this, and this will be a problem for the future. So, Buck, if you're talking like short-term trade, sure, maybe, man, but long-term future, I don't see it.
He's tried to pump the chain at least 3 times that we know of, in all different time periods.
Yeah.
And he's definitely tried.
Sure.
He needs to change the paradigm in a term where, look at this win that I have. I still have the magic. You can still believe in me because I still got it. You know, he needs something to be like, hey, look, like we still got this, guys. You know, let's be a little greedy here, and let's stop essentially just offloading as fast as you possibly can. Right.
It's a good point. I'll ask the question to any of you: is what would you be doing differently if you were him right now?
Oh, I could answer that. So look, it just brief. I'll try and be brief. Again, there may be legal considerations here, but this whole money injection, these children's toys with gambling products branded on them, these things by themselves, we all know, were never going to work. You need these things in combination with Richard out there actually trying and promoting these things. That is the only way this ever worked. That's what actually worked with Hex. Richard was pumping Hex while also being out there